The whole polygon, if you're in that red, Jones Crossroads, Foxtown, over here as we get toward New Holland, all of these areas part of a tornado warning right now, a potentially ongoing issue for us at this point. Let me slide over a little bit farther just so it's easier to see where we're looking here with this. Getting back off into parts of farther deeper, I would say, into Aiken County and ultimately into Lexington County as well. Rayflin, Severn, these areas are where we have that potential for tornado development, but I think especially just off to the west of New Holland right now. That's really where I want to hone in on this. So I just want to put a track on here now that we are zoomed in and we can really get a better sense for where that rotation is most likely. Get a little bit in front of our storm as it takes the radar a little bit of time to spin all the way around and give us that picture. But 1025, so essentially right now for New Holland, if you're in that area, you want to make sure you're getting into your safe spot. We're talking about the middle of your home on the lowest floor. The whole idea, again, is to put as many walls in between you and the bad weather outside. As we work our way toward 1033, this storm gets over near Severn, and then ultimately closer to 1040 Fairview Crossroads as we continue to track this storm out. So again, this is one that is capable of producing a tornado. We have the rotation showing up on radar, and we have a lot of lightning, a lot of very heavy rain wrapped up in the system as well. This warning stretches from Aiken County into southwestern Lexington County along I-20, but I think especially just south of that area is where we have the bulk of the rotation showing up. Let me switch over here to just the warnings, kind of clean things up a little bit for you so you can see where we're talking about. In orange, that's our severe thunderstorm warning, and for all of those areas, looking at the potential for hail up to an inch in diameter, and then ultimately some very powerful winds. But we're looking at our strongest winds within the tornado warning, and again, that is going to be closer to I-20, but I think especially just on the south side here, moving through Foxtown and over toward New Holland. If I'm saying areas that you're familiar with, you live near there, and if you're in this red box, you certainly want to make sure you're getting into your safe spot in your house right now. Let's zoom in a bit closer to where we're looking inside this warning, and again, if you see your area in red, that it means you are part of the tornado warning. You're also probably hearing your phone go off right now if you're Jones Crossroads, Foxtown, New Holland. All of these areas are part of that tornado warning, and the emergency alert system should be going off on your phone right now. That's why it did. It's for this storm that we have out there at this point. Let me switch back over here to more of our typical radar just so you can see that very heavy rain. And right in this area near New Holland, can even see what we would refer to as kind of a little bit of a notch, kind of a hook in the radar, and that shows us where rotation is also most likely. So we can look at it just based on where the heavy rain is coming down. But the other thing that we can dive into, again, is the actual rotation. We refer to it as the velocity, and that's essentially just saying what direction is the rain being blown around inside this storm. I actually like what I'm seeing here a little bit. Ultimately, what I try to find when I'm looking for where the tornado development is most likely is where we have these red colors and green colors essentially right up against each other. We would call that a couplet, where there's really 1 pixel of red right up against 1 pixel of green. And that just tells us those winds right next to each other are moving in opposite directions. And that gives us the idea that that's where a tornado could develop. So again, we look at this in this area here close to New Holland. I'd say for the most part south of I-20, but this storm just has a lot of areas that do have some rotation wrapped up in it. So I think it's really important with a storm like this that if you're in that red polygon, if you're in the tornado warning, that you're also taking those safety precautions. For the most part though, really where I'm seeing the bulk of this stormy weather and kind of the rotation wrapped up in it is on the southern end of this warning. Foxtown over to New Holland, and again, these areas as we work our way through Aiken County and then ultimately over into Lexington County, still part of this warning, stretches just about all the way over just shy of Pelion at this point, so we continue to track that storm out. Let me go back here to our radar and put this into motion, just makes it a little bit easier to kind of pick up on the storm and watch where it's been going. Let's change our view. We'll widen things out here so you can see this is not for everybody. This is really a pretty small area when we consider our entire viewing area. A lot of places totally dry right now, but that rain and stormy weather sliding in from the west to the east as we work our way throughout the night. Again, this tornado warning until 10:45, and one of the things you can see the easiest from this wide view is just how much lightning is really focused right in that area, telling us that that is a powerful part of the storm. There's a lot of very strong updrafts within that storm there, and it's gotten a chance to really gain some strength. So you throw that in with some rotation that's already going on in the atmosphere thanks to some very powerful winds up higher in the sky, and that ultimately gives us that chance for rotation down here at the ground as well. Let's zoom zoom back in a bit closer so you can get a better idea for exactly where we're talking about with this tornado warning. Again, we're in Aiken County right here. There's the county line crossing over into Lexington County with this actual warning. And ultimately, I think the brunt of the bad part of this storm is on the south side of I-20 as we continue here staying just north of Wagner with the bulk of the rotation and the worst part of that storm. Still some very heavy rain with this as we look up toward Batesburg, Leesville, and that is a powerful storm as well, but this is really where we're focusing in again, and that's in the tornado warning in that red box. Let's switch back over here to our velocity, give us a better idea with another update here from radar of where we're finding the rotation and just how tightly wound this system is. A lot of lightning with it, but as we zoom in a bit closer again, let me just switch back over here so we can get an idea if we can find any of those really close kind of gate-to-gate markers or pixels right up against each other to show us where that rotation is. Certainly some broad rotation inside of this storm, but I do think the overall trend is that this thing is looking not quite as tightly wound as it was. Let me just jump over here really quickly and check in with what's going on with the National Weather Service and see what they're looking at as well. Sounds like we've gotten reports of dime and nickel-sized hail out of this storm back when it was closer to Aiken, so we continue to watch that there as well. Looks like the National Weather Service is saying the same thing, just that the storm had some weak rotation. They watched it get a lot closer to I-20 and went with the warning. And there's another area of the storm south of the rotation, which they think is just some noise on the radar. So that was one of the things we were looking at as well, where we had some really wild colors that were showing up in the storm as well. Right now, though, it's this area right here that just kind of has, I would say, some broad rotation wrapped up in it, but certainly still a storm capable of producing a tornado, and that is why the National Weather Service has issued this tornado warning. This one goes in, it's in effect for us until 10:45 tonight as the storm moves quickly off to the east. Again, watching this one here closely, this is what they're talking about as far as things being down to the south side of the storm and ultimately just some noise on radar, but still keeping an eye out here for a lot of these different areas with this storm and the type of environment that we're in where we can end up with some of that rotation. It looks like maybe even a little less lightning starting to show up here with this storm, maybe a bit more robust back when it was closer to I-20. Still a powerful storm and still one that has a tornado warning on it. And we'll zoom in a bit closer here. New Holland over towards Severn. We're looking at Route 39, kind of right around where we have the bulk of that actual rotation. Let me zoom in even closer, get a few more road names here. We've got our 39 as we get over to the county line and 113. That's where we're looking at the strongest parts of this storm heading. Wagner, you're just south of the actual tornado warning, but again, as this storm moves through, it is packing a punch for just about everybody. I want to check in on hail size, what's being estimated by radar here, and as we zoom back in just north of New Holland, we can get an idea here for what radar actually picking up, thinking that this storm capable based on the reflectivity, basically what's being sent back to the radar site, we could be looking at hail about 1.1 inches, and the National Weather Service did issue this warning for hail up to 1.25 inches. So we are looking at a powerful storm here. Here's the tornado warning. Again, this is for northern Aiken County, heading into southwestern Lexington County along parts of I-20 and 178. We're just zoomed in here a bit closer, looking at 139 as well as, at 39 and 113 as part of that warning as well. Let's switch back over here and look again to try and find some of that rotation wrapped up in this storm. I think the bulk of it is hanging on the southern edge of things, but ultimately it is a little bit looser, not quite as tightly wound as it was. Let me show what I'm talking about here. We'll go back and we can kind of slow things down some, and I'll show you where things were a bit tighter. When we were talking about the noise on radar, really what we're referring to is some of this back here. You do see red and green up against each other, but that was not really where the rotation was in the storm. It's this section right in here, and this is ultimately what got the National Weather Service to issue the warning, is when you see kind of this bright green, almost whitish blue color right up against that red. And that's the way of the radar, or the radar's way of showing us that we've got winds moving going in opposite directions right next to each other. We can even get a sense for just how fast the winds were right there. Negative 58 miles per hour, so that is the wind going toward the radar at 58 miles per hour, and we switch over and get one of these red ones right next to it versus 2 miles an hour. So not a big difference on the one side, but we're talking about a 60 mile per hour difference with those winds in opposite directions right next to each other. And that's ultimately what allows us to get an idea that there could be a tornado developing. But this is going back over the last 30 minutes. So that was around 10:12. You can see that very tight rotation loosening some as it moves in. And ultimately now where we are, I think we're looking at our best shot for any rotation here, still on the southern edge of this warning, right around, or excuse me, at this point, east of New Holland and along parts of 39. Just as of 10:34, the National Weather Service has decided to continue the tornado warning and with the chance for hail up to 1.25 inches in diameter until 10:45. Again, this is for Aiken and Lexington counties. This is a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado, and it was 10 miles north of Aiken State Park, or about 15 miles south of Batesburg-Leesville. It does look like it's moving a bit slower, so I do want to change here my track, and when I do that, give me a better idea for just how quickly this storm is moving and where it's heading next. So earlier it was moving at 35 miles per hour. Now this warning has it in at around 30 miles per hour. So that gives us an idea here as we stretch this all the way out toward Pelion. We're looking at Berlin for this storm right around 10:50, and then ultimately over toward Thor at around 10:56. South of 178 here for the core of that storm with that most likely area of rotation, but all of these places inside the red box. Again, that is our tornado warning, and if you're in any of those, even likely if you're in Pelion, you probably still had your phone go off with the emergency alert, but parts of 278 all the way up here just off to the south of Pond Branch Road as part of this warning as well. Old Charleston Road in the warning also, and then 178 and I-20 are some of our big ones. Let me bring it back over here to our radar so you can just get a better sense for how the storm is shaping up. Tornado warning until 10:45 popping in for us. Some very heavy rain, a lot of lightning, and again, it's really on the south side of this storm where I think we've got our best shot at that rotation coming together. So Wagner, while not technically part of the tornado warning, that brunt of the storm, that rotation in the storm, likely to move very close to where you are. Starting to ramp up here for another round. Severe storm in Aiken County has produced up to quarter-size hail per a Skywarn spotter. So let me see here. Let's zoom back out. Maybe it's a good idea here. We can get a wider view of what's going on for everybody as we have our couple storms, but a lot more activity farther off to the west as well. As we zoom out even farther, what we'll do is we'll switch over to a different product here, kind of get a better sense for how all of these storms come together. Very easily can pick out all of the lightning wrapped up in this storm. Can find pretty quickly where our strongest cell is right now. And again, that is our tornado warning, where I'm pointing to in blue. As we zoom out farther, you can see a lot of busy weather, a ton of lightning across northern Georgia. And with that, we have several strong storms out in this area as well. There are severe thunderstorm watches around Atlanta. We don't have any watches in our area right now, and then watches that extend all the way back even into Mississippi. But where we do have severe storms up closer to Gainesville in northern Georgia, just outside of Athens, but some really powerful stuff coming together just farther off to the east there as well. Zooming in a bit closer as we get down toward Eatonton, you can see a strong storm moving through there, getting closer to I-20. Ultimately, that one tracks into our area as well. But right now, the bulk of our stormy weather favoring the western Midlands, and that's where we also do have our tornado warning at this time. That is in effect until 10:45, so still about 7 minutes left to go with this warning. We're looking at New Holland, over towards Severn, Raflin, Berlin, Thor, just west of Pelion is where this tornado warning goes all the way to the east. Let me switch back over here to our velocity, get another sense for how the rotation is looking inside this storm. And again, kind of finding the brunt of it. Back where we were talking before, right in this area on the southern edge of that tornado warning. As we zoom in a bit closer, we're looking at Route 39 as kind of one of our primary areas for that. And over toward ultimately 113 with where this storm is moving. Haven't had any reports of a confirmed tornado at this point, but just radar indicated. And again, that is all based on this velocity, basically which direction the raindrops ultimately are flying out there in the storm. So we continue to monitor that at this point. Right now, New Holland, Severn, out toward Wagoner, Berlin. This is where the bulk of the lightning is. It's where our heaviest rain is moving as well. And you can see here we switch over to kind of our more typical colors, and all of that red, even this little shade of pink right in the middle, just showing us some extremely heavy rain wrapped up inside this storm. Another tool that we can use kind of give us a chance to dive into the storm and slice into it. And this can show you a couple different things. So here, let me turn some things off as we work our way through this storm, just clean things up a little bit. Let me slide our view down a bit more. A tall storm coming in over 40,000 feet, and we're actually able to take this slice into the storm and kind of move around and see a few different things. Anywhere you see these pockets in the middle of the storm, I'll get my pointer back out here, with that purple right in the middle of the storm, but elevated, not coming all the way down, that is the radar picking up on hail inside the storm. It shows up as extreme or incredibly heavy rainfall, but really, more than likely hail inside the storm that will ultimately be falling out of the storm as it continues to move and continues to grow inside of there. As we get a little bit farther to the north here, you can see an even denser color, that really deep purple, deep pink, lofted up in the storm by these powerful updrafts, and then ultimately, once the hail gets too big, gets too heavy, that's when it comes crashing down. And right now our warning is for hail is for about 1.25 inches in diameter. So again, tornado warning with hail likely inside of this storm. Another thing we can do here, we can switch over, and sometimes this is helpful, sometimes it's not. I haven't looked at it yet, so you're looking at me here, or looking with me for the first time. We can sometimes find rotation in the storm by slicing into it as well. I'm looking for some of that here, especially as we go on the south side of the storm down here close to the bottom edge of the warning. But I think right now, really seeing the hail core is probably the most impressive thing, slicing into it this way. Let's switch back over here to our more typical view, and we'll clean up our map so you can kind of get an idea here for what's moving across the area for everybody. Heavy rain right now pushing through Lexington County with the tornado warning, especially where we have our strongest core of the storm. So Luda County with some very heavy rain, back to Edgefield, Greenwood. That's all going to continue to slide off to the northeast, heading into Newberry here shortly. Light rain around Columbia, but ultimately these storms are continuing to push that way. As we dive in closer again, Wagoner not technically part of the warning, but we do have a ton of lightning with that. And big thank you to Brittany Breeding, who just brought me some water. I appreciate it. We are looking at a very powerful storm that continues to push off to the east with this tornado warning until around 10:45 from the National Weather Service. Another time we'll check in here with that rotation, see what we're able to see, what we're able to find. And it looks like we do still have kind of the core of that just off into this area here, right off to the top side or just north of the bottom edge of this warning. And again, we're looking right around 39 to 113 is where we have the strongest winds and the most likely area for rotation inside this storm. Again, I know I keep saying it, but Wagoner not part of the warning technically, but it's an area where I would be getting into my safe place as well at this time as we continue to track this storm out. At this point, based on what I'm seeing, it is, the storm is not quite as tightly wound as it was earlier, but still have enough rotation in this storm. I would not be surprised to see this warning expanded and extended farther off to the east. New Holland, Severn, all parts of the tornado warning right now, but we'll likely see the back edge of that shaved off some. Let me bring us back over here to our radar so you can still get an idea. Some very heavy rain wrapped up in here, and I want to do one thing. What I'm going to do is, right now I've got a couple different radar sites working together to help me, but I want to change it over to just Columbia's radar, and that helps us to pick out even more easily, more precisely, that notch in the radar that we were talking about before. Right in this area, that is where rotation is most likely. And again, you can also pick up on the most intense part of the storm just based on the lightning, making it very clear where we're looking. Let me turn the radar back on to sweeping just over the last 30 minutes. Makes it just a little bit easier to see what's going on here with the storm, how it's developing. And we'll clean up the radar one more time, just kind of getting off that Charleston radar beam, and that will help us out as well just to get a better sense for where that notch is located. A ton of lightning racing out in front of this storm. You can get that from Wagoner pretty much up into parts of southern Lexington County. Thor, again, another area that's part of this tornado warning. And based on even just what I'm seeing right here on the typical radar scan, really want to make sure that you're taking these safety precautions, getting into the lowest level of your home, and again, on the most interior portion of your home as well. Anywhere along Route 39, 113, down to 302 and Wagoner, these areas here where we're zoomed in really close. Let me switch this over. Just want to pause that right now so you can see where we're looking. Don't want to keep running through that too quickly. 39 to 113, anybody in this area, part of the tornado warning, and again, where we're most likely looking at the potential for tornado development based on what we're seeing here. Another look at our velocity scan, again, kind of showing us right in that same area, just where we were looking, trying to find that spot where we have our winds going at different directions right next to each other. So it's kind of in this stretch right here where we do have that most likely, getting right up to 113 at this point. Very powerful storm in here right now, just up to Wagoner, just through New Holland, getting cut out of the storm at this point, and it looks like it has been expanded. The National Weather Service just now issuing another update to the tornado warning for tornado possible, now including parts of Orangeburg County as well, all the way until 11:15. So we've got a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado, and at this point, it is about moving to the east at about 30 miles per hour. So what I want to do here, let me remove the lightning just to make this a little bit easier to see again. And where we have that warning, now I kept saying Wagoner, not technically part of it before, but now Wagoner all the way over toward north, part of this warning. And as we switch things over here, draw a new cone based on our 30 mile per hour speed, and where I think that notch is most likely, or where the rotation is most likely, right in this area, moving off to the east. We'll go out the next 35 minutes. That would take us about 17 miles down the road. Berlin at 10:53, ultimately over toward Thor at 10:59, Swansea at 11:18. We're looking at this storm right now around 39 and right now around 39 and 135 and let me zoom back in here. 302, that's one of our spots. 113 and 39, That's where that rotation is most likely, just off to the north of Wagoner, just off to the southeast of Sievener as that continues to move through. Watching this one closely as it heads out toward Berlin, ultimately toward 302 and Thor, and continues over toward 178. Let's switch things up, get you a view here of the warning now that it has expanded some, and we'll get some of our wider view on here. Just for reference, Columbia, Lexington, not part of these warnings. This is down onto the south side of town, but at this point, with the expanded warning that goes until 11:15, we're looking at that for Gaston, for north, and just north of Nices here. Let's zoom in a bit closer, get a few more names on there for you. Thor and Peeling we've been talking about, Swansea, Woodford, north, right down 321. But back here toward Wagoner, Berlin, and Thor right now, that's where I think we have the worst part of this storm. And again, the part of the storm most likely capable of producing a tornado. Let's do that same thing we were looking at before here. Some very heavy rain around Wagoner as well. And with that, we are looking at our tornado warning. And in this notch here, that would be the area where we're most likely to see that rotation take shape. Let's switch back over here to our velocity picture so you can get a better idea for that. So much lightning with this storm that, again, I have to get this off the screen to make it easier to find that rotation. I think we're talking just northwest of Berlin is where that's most likely. As we zoom in here a bit closer, we're talking about 302, 113. That is the section where we have our rotation and the potential for tornado development to be the most likely issue. Let me just check in here again with the National Weather Service, see if they're updating anything on their end. And it doesn't look like it's still just tracking the same storm moving off to the east at about 30 miles per hour. And capable of producing a tornado. We do have storms that continue to grow farther off to our west as well. So let's zoom out and take a wider picture view of what else is out there and what other storms are on the way here for us overnight tonight. We'll switch this over to more typical radar view. A lot of lightning here off to the west of I-26, but still keeping a close eye on this storm in particular. And more of these storms riding along I-85. Most of those look like they are going to continue along that path here, along I-85, staying off to the north of our region. But this one down here, farther west into Georgia, and then this whole batch of storms really is something that we'll need to watch closely. As we zoom back in here, right now in our area, it really is just the one tornado warning at this time. And as we get a bit closer here, Columbia and Lexington specifically, not part of the warning, but as we get down toward Gaston, North, Wagner, that's where we have our most likely spots for tornado development. Let's get another view here of our more typical radar as we zoom in just a bit closer. Now we're looking over the last hour, some of that heavy rain racing out in front of this storm as well. See that heading into north and in toward closer to Swansea as well at this point. Let's switch off this Charleston radar, just make it a little bit more defined on where we have the rain really showing up in our area. A lot of lightning with this and ultimately that chance for tornado development. Let me switch over here back to our velocity data. And really, again, what this is looking at is the rain and what direction the rain is actually flying through the air. And right in that area here, again, we're looking just north of the county line. Just north of 302. That's where we have the most likely area for rotation, I'd say just off to the east of 113 at this point. If you're in this area, Berlin, over toward Thor, toward Wagner, you're all part of this tornado warning, and now is the time to make sure you are getting into a safe spot in your house. Again, that's putting as many walls between you and the bad weather outside. Right now, we just got an update here with that velocity scan, a new radar update, and it does look like that has loosened up quite a bit. And what I'm talking about again is that area where we have the tightly wound rotation, those raindrops and winds ultimately flying in opposite directions right next to each other. That's where we find the strongest part of the storm and the storm capable of producing a tornado. Let me see if I can take this back here for you. We're going to look over the last hour, and you can see here how this has changed. A lot of what we're seeing in radar here, all of this showing up, really just not a very clean radar scan. That is not what I'm concerned with. It's really kind of tracking this batch right here, where we're able to see the red and green right up against each other. That's where we've been most concerned for tornado development. That was back toward New Holland earlier, and now here, just looking over the last really about 15 minutes to a half an hour, you can see how that has evolved. And just in this last scan, we've lost a lot of that tightly wound rotation. Still in this area, and it's certainly possible that it could weaken some and then pick back up, but right in here is where I want to continue to focus for that potential tornado development. And as we switch back over here to our more typical radar colors, really just looking at the actual rain that's out there, you can still see that notch that's out there just off to the northeast of Wagner, heading over toward Thor with some very heavy lightning wrapped up in this storm as well. Right now, that is our only warning in the area, is this tornado warning until 11:15 tonight for this part of Aiken County into northern Orangeburg County, and then also over for southern Lexington County. Doesn't quite make it over to I-26, but that's where we have the core of this powerful storm at this point, racing off to the east at about 30 miles per hour. So what I will do at this point is put out another track on this storm. And at about 30 miles per hour, still focusing in kind of on the same area close to the county line. There is rain and there is lightning and there are gusty winds ahead of the track that I'm drawing, but this is the area that I would say would be most capable of producing a tornado, and that's the core of the storm that I really want to focus in on. So 10:53, we're looking closer to Berlin. 10:59 around Thor, and 10:53 is essentially right now. So Berlin, again, in an area that certainly needs to be taking your tornado precautions and safety measures right now. Thor, 10:59, 11:18 as we look over toward Swansea. So that's getting all the way out farther east if this storm were to hold together. Let's get a wide picture view of what's been happening around our area again. As we zoom out some, that will allow us to get an idea for what else is on the way. Strong storm moving into Saluda right now, Lexington County with some lightning and some heavy rain, but the bulk of the strongest weather is hanging down here just onto the southern edge of what we're seeing on radar. Some lighter rain across Columbia at this point as this all continues to push off to the east right now at about 30 miles per hour. Let me switch over here, just checking another tool that I have, another way to look at radar. I'm still seeing a bunch of heavy rain, some areas of rotation inside this storm, but not quite as clear cut as it was before. And that's ultimately what I'm looking for excuse me, as we track these storms. And what I hope to see is just that we lose some of that well-defined rotation in the storm, and we lose that obvious signature of where a tornado could develop. Ultimately here, we do still have some broad level rotation inside this storm. We still have the winds going in opposite directions inside the storm, and there is some spin to it, but it does look like it has backed down some, at least off on this section over here, closer to Berlin and Wagner. Still have a tornado warning in effect until 11:15, and if you're in the polygon, you still need to make sure you're doing what you need to do at your house. Again, getting into the lowest level of your home with as many walls between you and the bad weather outside. As we look off farther to the southwest of Wagner, let me just check one thing here, switch back to more typical radar. And we're looking on the backside of that storm there, so that is going to be another area we'll watch a little bit, but I think really where we need to focus is this area just south of Pelion, really right around the county line at this point. That's where we see that most likely area that we could get tornado development. Right around Thor with tons of lightning here, just south of Pelion, and ultimately heading over toward 178. Let's get another track on the core of this storm here, and we'll just get another idea based on, let me see here. There we go. Our track cone and where that rotation is most likely. Moving at about 30 miles an hour. This time we'll stretch it all the way out to I-26. The warning does not go that far, but just give you another idea. 11:12 for Swansea, 11:28 Staley Crossroads if the storm were to hold together. We still have about another 20 minutes with this tornado warning as the storm continues to move farther off to the east here at about 30 miles per hour. Let me switch back over to our velocity data. Just give us another idea of where we're looking for that rotation, where it's most likely. Berlin and Thor pretty much right in the middle of that, and then over toward the county line here between Aiken and Lexington County. Right in this area is where I think that would be most likely, and a spot where, again, if you are in there, Berlin, Thor, up to Pelion, ultimately areas east of here as well, you do want to make sure you're getting into a safe spot in your house right now. As we drop back down toward Wagner, still have a little bit of broad rotation around there as well, so into parts of Aiken County again, and then ultimately Orangeburg County is part of this warning as well, as it does stretch all the way over toward 321 around north and not too far off from Swansea. A lot of lightning with this storm. And then again, some very heavy rain wrapped up in here as well. Let's set the stage, get a big picture view of what's going on across our area. We'll switch over first here just to our warnings. And it's just the one warning in our area right now, and that is our tornado warning. Again, right around parts of Aiken County, northern Orangeburg County, and southern Lexington County. If your phone woke you up, this is exactly why. Tornado warning that stretches over to Gaston, north, and off toward